In three, two, one, four, three, two. Well, I'm actually doing this on purpose, and I have no idea why. Anyway, there we go. Thank you for the extra notification on the computer. Everything's going awry, but still sometimes the wheels fall off. But we remain true to the imperative. Hey, everybody, I'm Autism Fitness founder Eric Chessen, leading the movement for movement and bringing you, yes, another edition of Autism Fitness Tuesday Training. And in this Tuesday training, we are going to be talking about standards of exercises and performance and why they are so important. So before we start, if you are ready to become an Autism Fitness Certified Pro, if you are a professional, let's go through the alphabetical list, BCBA, an RBT, a rec therapist, an adapted PE specialist, a special educator, a speech pathologist, or speech therapist, because yes, there is a difference between the two, I know. If you are a parent, a family member, a coach, did I get the entire list? No, of course I didn't, because I left out, beyond me how I did it, but occupational and physical therapists or anybody working with the autism and neurodivergent population, you can join the movement for movement and become an Autism Fitness Certified Pro. So let's move on and talk about standards of exercise. So in autism fitness programming, we have three different, we can call them levels of exercise for every particular exercise. So the three are, number one, we have the standard, which we're going to be talking about here. We have modifications, and then we have progressions. And knowing and understanding how to use and when to use each of these three is highly important. So the standard is just that. It's the basis by which we go for exercise performance when the exercise is performed. A couple things here. Performed, number one, independently. Number two, independently with correct form and technique. And three, independently with correct form and technique for a certain amount of sets and repetitions. And there are reasons in the PAC profile, physical, adaptive, and cognitive, why this needs to be the case. Most of them are physiological, but there are some fascinating and important implications for adaptive and cognitive functioning as well that I will get into. So first of all, the standard, each exercise that we utilize in the autism fitness curriculum has a standard assigned to it. And normally that is a number of sets and a number of repetitions. Depending on the type of exercise it is categorically, we call these phases. So we have our warm-up phase, we have our power phase, and we have our strength phase. It's going to have a given amount of sets and repetitions in order to meet that standard criteria. So why have these standards? Well, from a physical perspective, if we are just doing an arbitrary amount of sets and repetitions during a session, then it may be insufficient to deliver a training effect. That's where the exercise has the physical results that we are looking for, that actual tangible benefit for the individual. And again, this transcends beyond the autism and neurodivergent population. This is all populations. So this comes from strength and sports science. We are just applying it to a given population, but it's all the same stuff. Like sets are sets, repetitions are repetitions, and we know within a given amount of sets and repetitions what type of implementation strategy is going to yield what kind of results. Although with the neurodivergent population, it is a little bit more nuanced at times, and I'll get into that. So looking at our warm-up, our power, and our strength, let's focus on strength right now. So in our strength programs, most of the exercises are going to have standard of 3 sets and 10 repetitions. Why? Why is this the case? Why is this the magic number? Well, it's only magic as much as it has been demonstrated through decades and decades and decades of validated research among many different populations, both detrained and highly trained. We're going to come back to that 3 sets of 10 repetitions is kind of the Goldilocks zone for developing strength endurance and hypertrophy. So the development of lean muscle tissue. Why is this so important for our ASD and neurodivergent athletes? Because many of them, I would say most, are either detrained or untrained. They've never had a physical fitness program that focuses on basic gross motor functioning, particularly strengthening exercises before, or if they have, it has been a long time ago. And if that's the case, then they are coming in without a sufficient strength basis. So we want to enhance all of those strength skills so that they can utilize them in their activities of daily living. Those are the outcomes that we're looking for. So in set and repetition parameters, if we have an athlete who is steadily improving their performance, and now with the squat and the overhead press and the band row and the band pull down, they are hitting over the course of 2 or 3 or 5 or 28 sessions those magic numbers, those standards. Then we know, number one, physiologically, the training is having a beneficial effect, and it gives us as practitioners the justification for progressing that exercise, making it more challenging. So the standard is there as the do not pass go until you have met this criteria, because at that point, the athlete is going to have derived significant and sufficient benefit from that exercise that we can start challenging it more. Now, it also serves, and this is really important, as a safety guard against progressing an athlete too early, before they are ready, and adding weight before it is necessary, and adding weight before there is adequate control through a full range of motion of the exercise. All of these things that are inherent to best practices in training and coaching and exercise science. These things are built into the protocol. So if the athlete has not yet met the standard for each one of these exercises, then there is zero reason to progress. We do not have to worry about it because it's not a factor right now. But you might be asking, what if my athlete has not yet met standard, or they're not even close to standard? That's fine, because that's where we have our modifications, the simplifications of our exercises. It might be fewer sets and fewer reps, and that's typically something that we might incorporate. More often, it's some type of coaching cue, or it is having the athlete work through a little less range of motion so they develop the stability and control. So the standard is your channel marker for whether you need to be right at that baseline level of ability that we're using with all of our athletes, or we need to go a little backtracky. That is a technical term, a little backtracky, and modify the exercise for the athlete, or we can progress it. So the standard is there to either gatekeep against getting too progressed for no good reason. It never helps to load an athlete with more weight or give them more of a challenge than they can currently handle, because it's not going to develop that skill. So understanding the standard for each exercise is going to enable us to work within the confines of that athlete's current performance abilities. So it's not about getting to standard as quickly as possible. It's about understanding what the standard performance for each exercise is, especially with respect to technique. So we can say that an athlete, they're doing 3 sets of 10 reps of squats. Yes, but is it a controlled eccentric lowering of that squat? Are they sitting on the box or the platform, or are they doing a correct touch and go? Are the feet rooted on the floor? What does this squat look like? And is the technique degrading over the course of that set? So do repetitions 1 through 5 look great, and then it starts slowly falling apart, and then we're counting these reps? So the good news here, as far as having the standard, is it lets you know, lets me know, lets us know as practitioners what our metrics are around decision making. Do we keep this athlete at this current level, or do we have license to progress them further and make it more challenging? If they have not met standard for any of the exercises or for a particular exercise, therein is your answer. It's not time to progress this exercise. And that would be the same for anybody. Again, bringing this back to the general population or the neurotypical population. If someone is working on push-ups and they're doing a modified version, we're probably, or a good coach is not going to put a 20-pound weight vest on them because they're still doing a modified version. Progressing it makes zero sense. The body is not going to automatically acclimate and get stronger simply because you're adding weight. We also want to make sure that the athlete is going through that full healthy range of motion and recruiting all of the muscles in that particular area, whether we're talking about low body where we're focusing on quads and hamstrings and glutes, we're talking about upper body and we're doing a pull focusing on the shoulders and upper back, or we're doing a push focusing on the shoulders again and maybe the chest. And then if we're breaking up the shoulder, we're going, anterior, medial, posterior, et cetera, depending on what the exercise is and what we want it to do. So coming back to those 3 phases of exercise, in the warm-ups, we may have 3 sets, but it could be, for example, with hurdle steps, 6 hurdle steps with each leg, right? In power, we may have a medicine ball push throw, and the athlete has 3 sets, but it is 6 to 8 push throws because with power, we're doing fewer repetitions because we're aiming for, literally and figuratively, the highest amount of velocity. So it's in consideration of not just all exercises, but each exercise within the phase and what that exercise is supposed to do. So as I mentioned before, let's break this down into physical, adaptive, and cognitive. I've already covered the physical. The standard is there to make sure that the athlete has enough volume, that the sets and repetitions, and enough skill, technical performance of that exercise to warrant going forward, or this justifies progressing the exercise. If not, no big deal. We just keep it at standard right now, or we modify the exercise for a little while until the athlete develops the skill to that standard. Again, this can take weeks, months, years. So the big consideration is just remaining consistent with that athlete's current baseline ability. Adaptively, when you have an athlete who meets standard performance for an exercise, typically they are motivated and engaged enough in that exercise that they are able to perform it independently. So you have an athlete who tends to be a little bit more motivated, a little bit more engaged. Now, with motivation, we're just looking at the key components of, is the athlete able to focus and complete the set to the best of their current ability? It doesn't mean that they love it or it's their favorite thing on earth. Oftentimes with some of our nonverbal athletes, they may not be able to communicate that, or we might miss that communication as well. So the most important thing is that they're doing it, and they're doing it consistently at that particular level of performance. Great, they're engaged enough that we can get 3 or 4 sets during a session. That is a good sign from a behavioral perspective or a motivational perspective, same as it would be with any other individual. Cognitively, when an athlete is able to perform an exercise independently with minimal to no prompting whatsoever, every once in a while we might, put our hands up to just cue an athlete to change something or fix a foot position. That's no big deal whatsoever. But when they are independent with that exercise, clearly they understand the expectation for performing that exercise, and they also have sufficient kinesthetic awareness or body awareness to perform it with correct technique. So 2 things are happening from a cognitive standpoint. They understand the expectation, number 1, great. And the second thing that's happening is they have that kinesthetic awareness, if we want to call it like the mind-muscle connection, whatever. They can feel their way through the exercise, whether it's a squat, keep doing this because overhead press, but band row, overhead press, squat, band pull down. The athlete understands and appreciates what they need to do physiologically, what they need to do physically in order to meet the current expectation for that exercise. So if we break down the standard, even though it is a metric of physical performance, it still has wide implications for adaptive and cognitive aspects of the PAC profile as well. So the standard is there for a very good reason. It keeps us from doing arbitrary exercises, arbitrary sets and reps. It sets us up for understanding and knowing what needs to be implemented and what criteria need to be met in order for the athlete to be successful. And we know that if the athlete is performing in that range of sets and reps, that we are most likely going to have a training effect whereby the the athlete gets stronger, more stable, moves better, and we're going to see these things show up in their general lives outside the confines of the fitness or adapted PE session. So that is the standard and standard performance of the exercise. If this has been helpful for you, definitely please subscribe and share this with people whom it might beneficially impact. And of course, if you're ready to become an Autism Fitness Certified Pro, the link is down there below. I'm Autism Fitness founder Eric Chessen, continuing to lead the worldwide movement for movement. Thank you for watching, and I will see you again with another Autism Fitness Tuesday training.